Jinx had been an absolute late-game monster before. She was so strong in fact that high elo 1 tricks play her every single game to great success. They keep their heads low during the early game only to then demolish everyone once they hit their power spikes. And Riot's response is to buff Jinx's late game even more? What could go wrong, huh? When looking at the numbers to which we have access right now, it doesn't look too remarkable. At first glance at least. Her win rate remained as stable as it can get, so the buffs did nothing, right? I mean, it makes sense. Buffing a champion's weakness, in Jinx's case her early game, should be much more valuable since it eliminates counterplay. But that didn't happen. They buffed her late game, which was strong either way, so this is rather a buff that helps in situations in which you were winning before, I guess. Let's have a quick look at her pick. What on earth is that? Okay, so just for context, I've never seen a champion quintuple in pick rate overnight. Normally when a champion's pick rate increases by just a little bit, the win rate instantly plummets. The reason is of course that all the new players who pick up the champion lack knowledge and experience and are therefore losing a lot of games. For Jinx, that didn't happen at all. Despite this. What could that possibly mean? Well, let's have a closer look at the actual patch notes and then analyze exactly what is happening in high elo Jinx lobbies. Jinx got buffed in 3 different aspects in total, and the first one is a buff to her base stats. It looks innocent enough, right? Health growth from 100 to 105. This means per level she gains 5 extra health. However, while this buff does exactly nothing in the early game, it kicks into gear exactly when Jinx wants to start teamfighting. You have to keep in mind, Jinx always farms for her level 9 power spike because then she has 5 points in Q. 5 points in Q means max range in her rocket form, which is very important for a champion that is immobile and an easy target for assassins. By having that max range rocket form unlocked, however, you can keep teamfighting no matter what. The enemy will have to hard commit to actually get through to you because you're so far away, which is even bolstered by Lethal Tempo's bonus range and by your chompers, which provide safety as well, but now also by all the bonus health you get at that point. Level 9 you already have 40 extra bonus health, which is essentially half a Doran's blade, for free, on top of everything you already have. And the longer the game goes, the more this accumulates, of course. However, I'd argue that this is actually the smallest of the buffs, which says quite a bit. But look at the, let's say second smallest, second biggest, I don't know, her Super Mega Death Rocket. The 5 seconds cooldown buff is whatever. The cooldown has never been exactly long, but it's also not exactly spammable, and 5 seconds shouldn't matter too much in that regard. But the damage buff is actually very substantial. Just for reference, the damage increases with distance traveled, and the maximum damage is unlocked by hitting someone from just 1 screen length away. It's not a crazy distance, it is very much achievable, actually in most situations even. And here not only do you get a 25 damage flat increase, which is the same as auto-attacking with an extra pickaxe in your inventory, but you also have a 15% bonus AD ratio on top of the AD ratio that already exists. The 25 damage is most crucial on level 6, but the 15% bonus AD ratio means all the late game items you buy will be even more valuable. In any case, these buffs are nothing compared to this. The enemy team always needed to be very careful around Jinx in teamfight situations because of her passive. 1 takedown means Jinx gets all the movement speed in the world, plus a bonus attack speed steroid which amplifies what she does best anyway, auto-attacking you until your screen turns grey. But with this, the enemy will fall like dominoes. 1 takedown can easily lead to a second either way, and then you have 50% bonus total attack speed. That's more than a full Runan's Hurricane would give you, just for comparison. Combine that with crit items, with all the AD, with Kraken Slayer, with Infinity Edge, what have you, and Lethal Tempo on top of that, and you just have nowhere to go. You can't fight, you can't run, you just die once that happens. The numbers already speak volumes, but a picture says more than 1,000 words, so let's see exactly what's happening. As mentioned, Jinx's early game plan hasn't changed whatsoever. She still needs to scale, especially with champion levels, but on the other hand, Kai'Sa, her lane opponent, got nerfed this patch as well. She has less armor now, so if she goes too aggressive, Jinx can try and look to punish with her ranged auto attacks with her Q. Generally speaking, however, Jinx's playstyle should be risk-averse, even to the point where giving up CS isn't out of the question. As long as you get your levels, you will be good to go. So yes, this is a little bit of an aggressive lane phase, and it would be better even to just play more passively. Especially in a situation like this, level disadvantage with the wave automatically pushing towards you, you should just be sitting way behind. All you're really doing by walking up is invite the enemy jungler to come and gank you, which can get quite dangerous for Jinx. In this situation she can stay safe enough, but they're still paying with a lot of health which could have been avoided. And again, this CS, the farm, the levels are so important. Jinx rightfully stays under tower, takes the CS to scale, despite the massive fight in the jungle right now. If you join there and lose all the CS, first of all, joining on level 2 doesn't really accomplish much. You can't really do much, and the enemy would just kill you anyway. So it feels bad to leave your team behind like this, but there's really no alternative if you want to get your scaling. On top of that, the higher the elo bracket in which you are, the more you need to expect the enemy to know how big of a threat a late game Jinx is, especially nowadays. So repeat ganks must be expected. However, Thresh is able to keep Jinx safe enough, and after pushing the minions out of your tower, you have a big minion wave yourself which can protect you. Ultimately, as long as you set up the minion wave in a way that allows you to farm consistently, your late game should be secure enough, even if the enemy jungler pays you repeated visits. Jinx's level 9 power spike has always been at the center of her game plan, but with her improved level scaling now, it is even more important. Whatever happens in other parts of the map really shouldn't concern you. You can't influence it anyway, and you have to stick to your game plan. However, when you do this, you will be rewarded with such great scaling that you will be able to bail your team out later on. They might get themselves in awkward situations right now, but even if the enemy gets fed, it doesn't matter because you can make up for that. And while Jinx ultimately gets pressured away from her tower and loses it, this shouldn't concern you either. It is quite common to lose the first tower on Jinx, and as long as you stick to your guns and reach level 9 in a consistent way, you're good to go. This is the moment where you can switch gears. The reason for this is, of course, that as soon as you hit level 9, you can safely participate in any team fight, which means you can safely trigger your passive no matter what happens. And this allows Jinx to go absolutely crazy, especially when fighting over objectives that can trigger your passive as well. This fight looked almost harmless, all things considered, but the truth of the matter is, the enemy team couldn't really contest anything. They had to run away and disperse due to the threat of Jinx's passive. Running preemptively rather than fighting is really the only choice. The problem for Red Team is that they can't really teamfight over anything. They have to try to assassinate singular targets, because as soon as one of their allies gets low, they risk Jinx getting her resets. So this puts them in quite a predicament, and Nautilus and Akali really pay the price here. However, Blue Team are feeling themselves a little bit too much here, trying to take Baron when they really have no business to. Red Team is still comparatively strong, so they have to reset. However, what happens then is that Red Team are trying to take Baron, trying to punish Blue Team for overstaying. But these are exactly the situations in which the Jinx buffs really shine. Of course, Red Team is technically successful. They are pressuring Baron, but Jinx with her passive resets and her enormous damage from her ultimate is pressuring the Red Team members. So are they really getting much out of the Baron buff if half their team is dead? After Nautilus goes down, Jinx just goes crazy with her auto attacks, and the big rocket with the buffed damage is able to get Kai'Sa so low that Cannon now has an easy time cleaning Kai'Sa up. Red Team simply have no choice but to yield to the pressure Jinx applies in teamfights nowadays. Now Red Team still have Baron buff and are able to successfully siege mid lane inhibitor and take down parts of Blue Team's base. However, they're getting themselves precisely in those situations they have to avoid against Jinx. She gets reset after reset after reset in this fight. Once the first enemy falls, it's just so easy to kill the second one, and then even easier to keep going. Jinx nowadays in teamfights is simply absurd. To be fair, Red Team are still playing a decent macro game. Seeing that Blue Team tried to take the dragon now, they want to take Baron again, using the time Blue Team needs to stop them. But I mean, at this point it's almost self-explanatory what will happen. Jinx gets one takedown, Jinx gets another takedown, her passive stacks and stacks and stacks, and blue team can either run or die. And run if they're lucky. Sometimes not even that, because the movement speed is just so absurd. It's really tough trying to deal with the Jinx at this point, even if you're now on your second Baron buff already. But I mean, I can kind of understand where red team is coming from here. They think they have the advantage with Baron and they feel the need to try and pressure blue team's base, which does work to some degree, but again, you have to be really careful not to overstay on low HP, because even if one of your teammates die, that just spells disaster. However, the enemy just doesn't seem to learn. Yes, red team were winning the entire map in the early game, but due to Jinx's enormous team fighting prowess, this lead is far gone at this point. They can't do anything but turtle in their base and hope for a blue team's mistake, because Jinx in the late game is now one of the best hyper carries you can play. In teamfights, her presence is simply unrivaled. She is hard to assassinate once she has her late game items and team support due to her big range, and once she gets that first kill, I mean, see for yourself, the enemy has no chance to fight back. Anyway, this is the patch to play Jinx if you want to, and if you want to learn everything about the best strategies and itemization and runes, click the link on your screen right there.